You sold a business for over 100 million, 110 million exactly. Yeah. But how do you even come up with an idea of that scale?
I just wanted to make $5 million.
Michia Rohrssen, CEO of Prodigy.
Getting rich is actually surprisingly easy. There's a very clear path that many people have taken to get rich, and you just need to emulate that path. Parents got divorced when I was 4. Mom declared bankruptcy. My mom's biggest fear when I was growing up was that I would have scars all over my face from my brother clawing at me because we were hungry. I've had a couple bad investments. The worst one was I could log into my brokerage account and I watched $40 million drained from my bank account. I could actually see the money in my bank account leaving my brokerage account. And the reason was,
hey, before we do get started with today's podcast, it would mean the world to me and my team if you could leave a like and subscribe, as it shows us that you're enjoying these podcasts, and it's a way for us to build our podcast channel so we can get even bigger and better guests. And by sharing this podcast with your friends and family, or even on social media and tagging us, it will just help us grow as well. So thank you, and let's begin the podcast. Thank you so much, Michia, for joining me on an episode of the Inspired Mind podcast. Yeah, it's great to have you here. We met once, and after that, I think knowing you personally made me feel like your story is something to share with the people. And obviously, it's already massive enough, but I want to first dive into your childhood and how it all started.
Yeah.
So
So I had a childhood that I think when you think about it on surface level, your takeaway is probably oh, that's a really traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
And when I first walked my wife through what I went through, she was like, this is awful. But what I've learned is that actually the struggles that you have early on often make you who you become. And so for me, my childhood was parents got divorced when I was 4.
Wow. Mom
declared bankruptcy. And so I would split my time basically between living with my mom, and she was a barista at a coffee shop. So we would literally she'd be baristaing, making coffee and stuff.
Making coffee, yeah.
And I'd be sleeping in the back of the coffee shop because we couldn't afford nannies and daycare or anything like that. And then when I was with my dad, we would basically go to the soup kitchens for food. And so I grew up not feeling poor, if that makes sense. But I grew up feeling I had to just sort of take hand-me-outs and I hated it. I hated going to the soup kitchen. I think the soup kitchen specifically, you could just feel this I'm in line because we can't afford food. And it was just very palpable in the air. And that was something that, I really grew up with my whole life. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I started to really recognize that all the behaviors that I was doing were because I felt like I wasn't worthy in this world and wasn't enough. So I was trying to achieve different things. And I think that's, to many ways how I got into business, how I got into doing different world championships for martial arts. It really came from this childhood of just being poor and feeling like something was wrong with me because of that. And I had to prove to the world that I was enough. So
yeah, I find that really interesting because I always think that whenever someone gets into business or anything specifically they succeed in, there's always that a moment in your childhood which gives you either pain or excitement that leads you to do things. So which moment specifically, if you could pinpoint or remember that one moment, which was I don't want to have this life when I grow up, or even my kids or stuff like that?
There's so many. For me, I don't know if there's this huge hammer drop moment. There's a collection of moments that are just I would say really painful. So when I was 5, I used to babysit my brother, who was my half brother, who was 1, and we were so hungry we didn't have any food. Wow. He would literally, I don't even think he knows this and remembers. He would scratch my face, and I would have scars all over my face. And my mom's biggest fear when I was growing up was that I would have scars all over my face from my brother clawing at me because we were hungry. So there's just a lot of memories of real struggle. And then I think actually what really changed it for me was the month I graduated high school, a book came out, The 4-Hour Workweek. I'm sure most people have heard of it, are familiar with it. But it was the first time that I started to actually believe that I could do something bigger in life. So it's kind of this this swelling of experiences throughout childhood where I was I'm just not enough. Like I didn't have that childhood where I was like, one day I'm going to make it, one day I'm going to be rich. I think that was too far removed from my experience to even dream those dreams. And I was actually the 4-hour work week where I was like, there's a real path here and I can start to do something. So it was kind of, there was no specific moment. It was definitely that book and like years of, I guess, what you'd call trauma. Like, so I think like when I describe it to my wife, she's like, that sounds pretty dark. But for me, it was just like my childhood.
Normal.
Yeah. It was just like, it wasn't, you don't know better. Yeah. So you just feel like you're less, and that's just the way world is. It's not like, it's just a feeling I grew up with.
I think your story is so kind of resonates with so many people, like myself as well. What I had my childhood as was, it's normal for me, but if I tell someone how I lived my childhood, they'll be like, holy crap, that is something so like hard to live in. But I'm like, that was just normal for me. So whatever happened was normal. And I think a lot of people are right now, young people who are listening to this podcast are in that stage, but they don't know where or what next or so. Now, if you look back, how were you kind of guiding through your life and then eventually you reached here?
So I think the 4-hour work week, like I said, set it off because it started to give me a vision for this different life. Like, and Tim Ferriss had all these stories of like winning a kickboxing championship in China and like tango dancing in Argentina and like just all these really cool stories. And so I started to at least realize, hey, there's a gap between where I am and where I think I could be. And that was my first big aha moment is when you realize like I could actually be more in this life than I had planned to be. And then from there, my biggest obsession became like, how do I close that gap? And so literally through basically from 17, when I first found 4-hour work week, honestly, I still do it today. But like, I would say like really, I was a maniac through college and after college. I was just obsessed with learning the skills that could make me like become more successful. And so I read like hundreds of books, like, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, like all the different classics up to like books that I don't even remember. Like I was reading like 100 books a year probably for like 7-8 years straight. And I think I just became hyper obsessed with this idea that I could literally read, learn skills, and like change my life trajectory. And that's something that I still like carry today. Like that's, sort of how we connected. I'm like, now I'm making content and I was like, you're crushing it in the content game. Like, how do I learn from you? But I think this internal belief that I am not going to be who I am today in 10 years. I can completely change that man in 10 years by the work that I put in today. And that just became like a recurring story in my life of how I just tried to level up.
I find it interesting how reading books was kind of your way of learning. Some people have kind of the belief that, books won't make you rich and everything like that. But what differentiated you was that you actually applied what those books told you to do.
Yeah.
Most people read books and they think they expect to become wealthy or rich or I don't know, whatever they're doing, become successful overnight.
Yep.
So what would you say when you read your books? Did you kind of apply it throughout your business journey or in life that helped you get that success you have today?
Yeah. So there's this like, you on Instagram, you see these like motivational reels or whatever. I saw this motivational reel from Chris Rock that I think like really sums it up. He talks about when he was poor, like his car would break down on the side of the road and he would ask people for help and no one would help him. And then when he started pushing the car himself, people would stop and say, oh, like you're already going down the journey. Let me get out and help you, because they see that you're putting in the work. So I think as it relates to like this thing where you read a book, you want to get the result, you read another book and you're still stuck in life. I just was already doing the things and failing. So I needed the books to help me. Like I started my first real business when I was 17, right after I read the 4-hour work week. And so I was already like in the trenches, basically failing entirely at business. So it wasn't like this aspirational, I hope one day the knowledge that I'm learning here will like help me. It's like, no, like I'm literally failing in business, like losing customers, not making money. And I need this to be solved today. So it wasn't I think learning wasn't a fun, aspirational like hobby I used to kill free time. It was like throw me the life rescue like raft or whatever. Like I'm drowning right now. And that's what really made the difference. Is like I needed to learn these things because I was already in the action. I think the mistake that people make is, you think, oh, one day I'll start the business. One day I will do the thing that brings me closer to my goal. And I just need to learn more. And then get this like analysis process where you think it's just like, learn more, then I can do this. But I don't know the perfect business idea. I don't know the perfect marketing funnel. And what you realize is you just start and then you learn along the way. And that's the only way this process works, in my opinion.
Yes. I love the part of like people waiting until they get something perfect, the perfect business model, or everything they want to be perfect, and that they never start.
Yeah.
And so when you started your first business at the age of 17, a lot of 17-year-olds want to start a business, but they don't know what to start as well. So what was your kind of journey of starting your first business before I even go to like what business it was and everything?
Yeah.
How did you even come across that business?
So I'd read the 4-Hour Workweek and I was like, okay, I want to do something. At the time I was so obsessed with passive income. And later we should talk about why I think passive income is like the dumbest thing you can focus on. But for now, we'll just go back to 17-year-old Michia who thinks passive income is the dream. And so I was thinking like, how can I find a way to generate income without working? At the time I was selling cameras at Circuit City, minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. So I'd like work 8 hours, 10 hours, get off work, and I can barely like go on a date and buy dinner for $2. Like, it's just like, I knew that wasn't the way. So I just started researching different like ways to generate passive income without actually working. And it eventually stumbled on this, what became the affiliate model.
Okay.
And so my business idea was like, can I, and this has been a theme throughout every business I've ever started, which is like find something that people want that is not currently being fulfilled and just try to be the person that fulfills it. And I know that sounds like so simple, but that's literally all you need to do to build a good business is like find a need, be the one to help them fulfill that need. And you don't even need to be an expert in the area. You just need to be the one putting in the work to help these people that need it. So my really dumb first business idea was actually, I bought this. So I was doing keyword research on Google and I saw that ankle tattoo designs was like this really popular search term. A lot of people wanted ankle tattoo designs.
Okay.
But if you searched ankle tattoo designs, you didn't find websites about ankle tattoo designs. You found like shoulder tattoo designs or like back tattoo designs. And so I was like, well, these people just want ankle tattoo designs. So this is 2007. So I literally went and bought ankletattooddesigns.com and I built like this would not work today for the record, but at the time it was the dumbest webpage ever. It was literally just a header that said, hey, are you looking for ankle tattoo designs? We have thousands of ankle tattoo designs. Click here to see them. That was the whole website. And the website would just redirect you to this guy called Tattoo Johnny. And Tattoo Johnny had ankle tattoo design. So he had an affiliate program. I would get like 20% of every ankle tattoo design someone bought. And I just slapped that website up. No analytics, no anything. And just waited. And like, I didn't know if anyone was coming to my website or not, but if I searched ankle tattoo designs, it showed up number one, because at the time, like if you own the domain, you would just rank for that. And like a month later, I think I got a check for like, I don't know, like $90, $120, but it was from Tattoo Johnny. And apparently I had sold some ankle tattoos. And I was like, this is amazing. Like that website took me an afternoon. I had to learn a little bit. But I made like the equivalent of me working 2 full days at Circuit City. So that was like my first like online business, I guess you could say.
Did you code the website yourself?
Let me think. 2007, I think I did learn how to code. So I wanted to go to school for computer science. So I was like starting to dabble in programming. And I think I had Googled like, how do you build a very basic website, HTML? And it was like literally just like HTML, H1,
CSS.
no CSS.
No CSS back then as well.
CSS existed, but it was way above my pay grade. So I was like,
wait, then I can imagine the website, it would have no colors.
No. It was literally just, so I centered all the text.
Yeah. And
it was all like H1 headers, so it's really big black text. It was like, looking for ankle tattoo designs. We have them. Click here. And it's just a blue text link. Like, that's the website. And that wouldn't work today, but it was just one of those like, I almost think it was a benefit that I didn't know better. Like if I had read all the books, I'd be like, man, I've got to have, different navigation, and I need site maps and a contact us page, and it has to have my email. I didn't know better. And because I just started, like, and actually took action, I was able to then learn. And that's why I was like, again, reading the books, trying to get better, because I had no idea what I was doing, but it worked.
So you didn't do computer science?
I did, unfortunately. Well, I don't know about unfortunately. So, before I really dreamed of business, my like grandest dream in life, like if I would have imagined like what's the highest achievement Michia can achieve in his entire life if he really does amazing, it was to get a computer science degree, become a programmer, and program video games.
Oh.
I because my childhood was not the best, my escape was video games. And so I would literally just go and play video games like 4 or 6 hours a day after school every day. And so I was like, I love video games. I'll make them. And so I wanted to get this computer science degree. And I thought, I looked like, I think at the time, a computer scientist programming video games would make like $60,000 a year or something. And so like that was, if I can do that, like that is the peak of life. Like I'm going to get this like McMansion in the suburbs with like my wife and our 2 kids and like 2 dogs. And like, we'll go on vacations, like not international, but like we'll go like, a couple hours away, like twice a year. Like that is sort of like what I consider to be upper class life.
That's the life you imagined.
That's the life that I allowed myself to imagine. I think because I just didn't have that self-belief, I just put my own ceiling. And I think people do this all the time. Like you see it where everyone has this tendency where you just want to put ceilings on your dreams. Like anytime you set a goal, especially a numerical goal, let's say you're saying, I want to make X amount next year, and maybe it's $1 million. If you just 10X that and you say, actually, I want to make $10 million a year, you will come up with reasons why you can't do it. Oh, I'm too young. I'm just starting out. I'm just getting going. And so, and I still do this. I still struggle with like, whatever I set my goal to be, why can't it be 10X more? And what I found is you will discover your own limiting beliefs by going through this process. If you just 10X your goals, you'll say, no, I can't do that because, but for me, my goals were so low. It was $60,000 a year, computer science degree. So I ended up going to school, and I ran a couple different businesses through college, but by probably like sophomore year, so for one thing, I was like failing college because I was, again, in that early phase where you don't know what you're doing. You just work so much. So I was working like 16, 18-hour days and trying to go to school. So I'd miss a bunch of classes. And at my college, you were allowed to miss 25% of classes of any individual class before you failed. If you miss more than 25%, it's an automatic F, even if you have straight A's in the class. So literally all my classes, I would like map out what days can I miss, how many. So like all of my classes were like, Michia missed 24% of the classes this like 1%, semester.
Yeah, exactly.
I would always just push it, which had like consequences. Like one time I had unexpected surgery and had to like go to class on like all these pain meds like taped up because like I literally can't miss a class. Like I've pushed it too far. And I did fail some classes. Like I unfortunately failed calculus twice in college because I was like too busy running these businesses where I had no idea what I was doing. And I was just like working like these crazy hours. But yeah, I stuck with it mostly just because I wanted to like make my mom happy. My parents couldn't afford to put me through college. So it was kind of a catch-22. Like I'm the one working hard to pay for my own college, but I still don't want to drop out to make my mom, like I just wanted to make her happy. And so, yeah, like sophomore year, I knew I was never going to get a programming job. I knew it just wasn't for me. I wanted to do business, but I still stuck with it. I still graduated in 4 years. And I've never had a programming job. I've just been an entrepreneur.
I'm just casually laughing because I did computer science. While I was at uni, I tried a bunch of businesses.
Yeah.
And I knew I was not I wanted to become a programmer as well, but things didn't turn out how I wanted to. I did graduate for my parents. Here I am, not doing anything related to computer science, but more in the business world. Yeah. And I think it's so weird that how although you built a company that massive, but your path is so similar to how most people have their path, as like you're trying a bunch of things. But when you're trying this bunch of things, then how do you go from making few thousand or few hundred thousands to then coming up with a business that you sell for over $100 million?
Yeah.
Like, how does that even work?
Yeah. So to get to selling the business for $110 million, I actually had to hit one of my lowest points.
Okay.
And that was when I realized like I need to make some pretty big changes. So at the time, I was running this marketing agency. I was 24 years old, and we basically had a bunch of websites that ranked for different keywords. So they would rank for car insurance, motorcycle insurance, home insurance. And we had like call centers set up. You'd call in, and if you called it, they would pretend to be like my website. Like they'd say like one of our websites was Motorcycle Insurance Helper. So they'd be like, hey, thanks for calling Motorcycle Insurance Helper. How can we help you? I didn't run that call center. It was like this other company, and I just got paid for all the calls that went to that. And it was pretty sweet. Like I thought I was living the dream life. I'd read 4-Hour Workweek, passive income, like make your muse, go on these amazing vacations. So I was running this business from basically a laptop, and I was traveling. I spent like 2 weeks in China, 2 months in Thailand, a month in Japan, like kind of just like, I thought I'd really made it.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing to do at the time, which is like so awful, but I was so addicted, it was like really unhealthy, is I would open up my phone and pull up this dashboard that I had that would show me how much money I'd made that day live. So it like all the calls, all the leads that we were sending were tracked. Pull it up and it'd be like, you know, it's breakfast and I've made $127. And I'm like, I'm in Thailand and breakfast is $2 and I just made $127. Like, this is insane. And I'm like 22 at the time. And on a good day, we would do like $500, $700. On a great day, 1,000 plus. So it was like, I was like, this is insane. And then one day I opened up my phone and refreshed. It was $0. And I was like, that's weird. Usually by now I've had like a couple $100, refresh it again, $0, refresh it again, $0. I went home, panicked, pulled up my laptop, looked it up, and all of my websites had been banned by Google, like permanently banned. And you can't like call Google and be like, hey, what's going on? Like There's no email to send. Like, it's just like, sucks for you. Like, you're just done. And so I went from making like up to $1,000 a day to $0 a day.
Wow. And
my whole like passive income dream kind of came crashing down on me. And this is when I was 24. At the same time, I feel like sometimes just the universe brings you things that I don't know if like the universe might have been bringing me these things for decades, but I wasn't ready to hear them yet. But at this point, the universe brought me something that I was ready to hear, which was two things. One, I learned about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. And the idea behind that was generally, rather than building like this passive income stream, which I had seen doesn't actually build you the life you want, because if you just rely on passive income, your passive income can fall away. The business can change, competitors can come in, and now it's not so passive. You have to work against it. So it's like passive income is only passive until it's not, and then you have to like get back to work. And if you just rely off income of a business, it's really hard to actually totally just unplug, do what I was doing, like travel around the world forever. So the FIRE movement said, build a like money machine, like an investment portfolio, basically, that you can live off the rest of your life. And you can withdraw a certain amount, and then because of the markets appreciate and everything, you can just truly, truly retire. And so I moved from wanting to build a passive income business to I want to build like this nest egg of money. And at the time, my goal was $5 million. Okay. So I did the math. $5 million is, you know, if you take 6% of that a year, it's $300,000. And this was when I was still single. So I thought that would be more than enough money. Now I've learned otherwise. But at the time I was like, $5 million, I'm set for life. And so I then just, rather than thinking, how do I make $1,000 a day, $10,000 a month, I was like, how do I make $5 million? And I didn't care if I went from 0 to 5, like that. I didn't need to be a steady thing. I just needed to get to 5 somehow. So that was like the first thing that sort of came in my life. The second thing that really put me on the path of ultimately building the business that I sold for 110 was there were all these news articles, and this was 2014, Instagram, bunch of young kids out of San Francisco built this company. I think it was like 19 people. They'd run it for like a year. They sold it for $1 billion. Yeah. So I was like, man, what am I doing? Like wasting my life with these like
Yeah.
small 6-figure businesses. Snapchat, which is like, you know, I mean, they try to be something else. Snapchat is for like sending nude pictures to like other teenagers and making them delete. And they got offered $4 billion by Facebook, and they turned it down. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is going on out there? And then WhatsApp, messaging app, gets sold to Facebook for $16 billion.
Yep.
And all that happened in like the span of a couple months.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I got to get out there. And this is one of those things that if I had to credit a lot of my success to, it would be this really strong conviction of just going where the magic is. So like when I was in South Carolina and I was too poor, the magic was just my books. And I would just like immerse myself in that environment. When I had a little more money and I got to move to San Francisco, I just hopped on a plane, and I still had an apartment back where I was living. So I was, my first 4 months in San Francisco, I was paying double rent, still had a car back home. And I was like, I just need to be in San Francisco. I don't know if there's something in the water here or whatever, but like all these kids that are like, I was 24, and a lot of the people younger than me were becoming billionaires. And I was like, this is so crazy. Like I've never heard of anything like this. So I moved out there and I was like, I'm going to build a business that is just like these other guys. They're building these tech businesses. So I've got to learn how to build a tech business, and I need to make $5 million. And I was super clear about that. On like why I moved to San Francisco, what I was looking for. And that's really how it all started. I mean, we can talk about like how I came up with the idea and everything else, but like, it was really just this passive income failed me. I need to make $5 million so I can retire happy at a young age. And the way to do that is what these young kids are doing in San Francisco. I didn't overthink it too much. It's just like, I need to be there.
I love that so much, because I think even till date, passive income is such a high thing that people aim to make a certain amount every month so they could retire. But I think the FIRE movement, which I think I learned from a friend of Andrew Kirby. I think he's the one who I heard it from. And I was like, wow, I actually just need to build a portfolio which can give me, let's say 4%, 6%, take that money out, and I can live my life comfortably without even working ever.
Yeah.
And so I was actually surprised. So I think if most people are still struggling to understand this, it's basically creating a small investment portfolio of how much you think you want to live your life with every single year. And then you put that into an investment account, which is going to give you 4%, 8%, or whatever percent that account is given. And then you just take that money out end of the year and use it to kind of live your life. So I really love that thing. And I think that's what most young entrepreneurs, or even most young people, should aim towards rather than the passive income side. Now going to how you came up with the business idea. So you sold a business for over 100 million, 110 million exactly. Yeah. But how do you even come up with an idea of that scale? Did you think that this was going to be something which is going to be worth over $100 million?
I just wanted to make $5 million. Like, I literally, I always sort of had this rule in the back of my mind in Silicon Valley, because in Silicon Valley can be a very dangerous place to like drink the Kool-Aid too much. What I would find is I would have friends who sold a business for, let's say, $700 million, and they're like 25 years old, and they feel like a total failure.
What?
Because they aren't the next Mark Zuckerberg that's worth $40 billion. And so Silicon Valley, it becomes this infectious, like, it's so funny because everyone there just like drives super beat up Camrys and like raggedy jeans, but they're worth like billions. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And so I was really conscious early on to really just convince myself and remind myself, hey, you're here to make $5 million. You're not here to make $5 billion, because the chances of making $5 billion are much smaller than $5 million. So as I was coming up with a business idea and running the business, I always had this sort of like just mental reminder in the back of my head, like, pull the plug when you can and take your $5 million and run. Like, don't do it in an unethical way. Don't just like raise a bunch of money from VCs, pay yourself a bunch of money and leave. But like, if you get the opportunity, an opportunity comes knocking where you can sell this business and you can actually achieve your dreams and retire, do it. Don't chase these massive numbers that your friends are chasing. Because like I have friends that are worth $40 million, and they confess to me they feel poor. I'm like, not poor, you're loaded. But it's such a weird place to live in. And if you haven't lived there and if you haven't seen the staggering amount of wealth that really young people have, it's just hard to describe. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then from there, I said, okay, well, you want to make $5 million. What is the best business you can start to do that? And so I looked at different businesses and I looked at like, can I start an e-commerce business? Can I start should I do like drop shipping? Should I do an agency? Should I do social media? Like at the time, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, they were all blowing up. So I was like, maybe I'll do social media. But, the other thing about Silicon Valley is you meet people and they are so smart. Like they walk on water of intelligence. Like, and I knew I wasn't that.
Yes.
Like some of these people, like, like they graduated high school at 15 and then they did their master's at Stanford in a year. And like, it's just like, that's not me. And all those kids are now going to build the next Facebook. Like that's what they're working on. And I said, I don't want to be competing against them. So I said, let me find a market that I think all the kids at Stanford are just ignoring. Like they wouldn't even touch. So I started looking at the framework I came up with was like really old, unsexy markets. I wanted something that no one in Silicon Valley wanted to do because I just thought it'd give me a higher advantage. And so I literally looked at probably like over 1,000 markets. And I looked at, how big is the market? How much are they spending on software? Is the software any good? And do they like the software? So a good example is like I looked at farming. Farming is a massive, massive, massive market. In the US, it's trillions of dollars. But if you look at the software that they buy, it sucks. And it's pretty cheap. And the farmers don't seem to mind. So like you can't really build a great business building software for farmers because they're not going to pay more than like $50, $70 a month for the software, no matter what you build. And they don't really mind that their software totally sucks. It looks like something from the 90s. And they're like, yeah, but it works. Like, we milk the cows, we sell the milk, like everything's working. So I looked at markets where it's like, what are people really unhappy with? And that's basically how we stumbled across car dealerships. Like car dealerships in the US they're generally rated the worst consumer experience you can have. And in fact, there's one study that shows you would rather have to deal with unexpected home repairs than buy a car. So like a hurricane comes by, the tree falls on your roof and like it's leaking into your kitchen and you have to go hire a roofer and like fix that. You would rather do that than buy a new car, which is like, cars are awesome. I'm a huge car guy. Like it was one of my dreams my whole life is to have this like crazy car. And yet people hate it. Like they hate going to the dealership. And so I knew there was this massive market with a lot of like unhappy consumers. And the dealerships spend a ton on software. We would find software packages that would sell for $5,000, $10,000 a month. And so we knew it wasn't like farming. We could actually build a real business there. And we looked at in Silicon Valley, they call it the TAM, total addressable market. It's something that every venture capitalist looks for. What they basically want to see is, can this business reach multiple $billion of revenue? And the general framework is if you can take let's say a business that can reach $2 billion a year in revenue, you might get 10% of that. So now you're making $200 million. Well, on the public market, that's probably going to trade at 10x, 20x. So now you have a $2 to $4 billion business. So VCs can invest, investors, and everybody's happy. So when we looked at that, we came up with a market of about $2 billion for our auto software. And I was like, I only need $5 million. So I was like, literally, if I can sell this for 10 times the revenue, if we can get this to like $1 million a year in revenue and I can sell it for 10, and at the time I had a co-founder, so we'll split it 50-50, like that's my $5 million. Yeah. So by playing in an arena so large, you get to be, I don't think you can be terrible at business. You can kind of be just average and you only win 0.1% of the market. And you can still sell a business for like tens of millions of dollars and retire and live life. So that was kind of the mindset we went into. It was like, we're not going to build this $20 billion business. We're not going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but that's fine. We're going to find a market where we can build a good, it feels so silly again, just this Silicon Valley mindset. Like 110 million is almost like a poor outcome. And so like the power laws, like 20 billion is not even the same league as 110 million. So it's like we're just not one of these exceptional 1 of 1 million outcomes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter for you as an individual. you get to do whatever you want if you build a business like this. So that's kind of how we ended up in this. And we had no experience. Like I was a huge car guy, so I'd watch all the Fast and Furious movies. And
that's what I'm kind of the most interested in, or even the interesting part is that you had a goal of making this much amount. You find an industry that these guys are not going to attack and you're going to attack. The thing is, when you don't have any experience for that industry, how do you even find the confidence to be like, you know what, I'm going to jump into this industry and I'm going to kill this, not kill the industry, but make a lot of money from this industry?
Yeah.
And did you, along with that question, well, I will come to that question after, but like going into just that industry without knowing anything, how was that? Was that just like, we're just diving into this now?
Yeah. So it was, I think we actually had a bit too much ego early on, if I'm being honest. So my co-founder, thankfully was that Stanford whiz kid. He had dropped out of his master's degree at Stanford to build a software company, and he had sold it to Dropbox before. Wasn't a big exit, a couple $1 million, but he had made a bit of a name for himself, and he was like, a serious tech entrepreneur. I'd been an entrepreneur at that point for like 8 years. So I built a handful of businesses, had some success, 6-figure stuff, nothing massive. But, we looked at the people building software for car dealerships, and we were like, these guys suck. Like their software sucks. They don't care about building good software. They're just milking this cash cow. So we thought we were going to come in and just like blow the socks off car dealerships. We were like, we're these like Silicon Valley hotshots. Like we both built awesome businesses and we're here to like change your life. And the dealers were basically like, get the hell out. Like they didn't care at all because we didn't actually know their business. And there's all these subtle nuances to an industry like that, where they're very quick to recognize if you're an outsider. And so like little things like TO, which is like turnover, which is where a salesperson hands it over to the manager, or PVR, profit vehicle retail contract, all these different things that they would use in lingo. And at best, we didn't understand. At worst, we would maybe use the lingo wrong or something. And whenever you use this lingo that sort of just tips off the person you're speaking to, you're an outsider, they won't do business with you. This is how these older industries work. And so if we had come from automotive, I think we would have actually built the business much faster. But because we didn't, we basically spent like legitimately the first 2 years just getting our teeth kicked in by dealers. And they would just like slam the door on us. They wouldn't really listen to us. And it wasn't until we really took a step back and humbled ourselves. And we went to the dealerships and we said, listen, we don't know what the hell we're doing. We've been able to convince some investors for some reason, give us some money, and we want to build software for you guys. Like we think we can help you, but we legitimately just don't know enough about your industry. Can we just sit on the floor and watch you do your business? Can we attend the trainings? And literally I, in our first hire named Eric, we went actually to one dealership and we went through a 2-week training program that they put all new hires through. So we literally got like certified to sell cars. And it was this understanding that like, we just need to humble ourselves and learn from these people, and they will actually guide you into building software that can help them. No car dealership is going to wake up one day and say, I'm just going to stop selling cars today and start building software. They don't want to do that job, but they do want someone to do it for them. So I think just getting to that place where it was like, we thought we were cool, we're not. Just be super humble about this and learn from these people. Then you can actually start to build something that people want to buy and you can make real money doing it. So
makes sense. I think that's the kind of main important part of like doing your research. Just in terms of the question which I asked previously was like, how do you do the research for a market? So like if a 18-year-old is watching this, can you just go on Google and just start looking, and or is there a specific thing you should be looking at?
So here's like sort of 3 simple steps you can do to find basically any market that is amazing. Like if you just follow these 3 steps, you can build an amazing business. First, you go on Google and you want to find markets that are old, large. And the way, again, defining large, I would look at how much they're paying for software currently and how many customers are there in that market. So for us, there's 63,000 dealerships in the US that's new and used. And then how much are they paying for software? Okay, they're paying $5,000, $10,000 a month. You multiply those two together, and you want to make sure that that's at least like $1 billion, $2 billion.
All right.
If you multiply those together and it's like $80,000, it's like, go do something else because you're not going to be able to build a big business. So that's step one. The second is you need to look for some sort of wave in the market. So for us, there were these studies coming out that were showing year over year, customers want to buy cars online more and more. So like the year before it was like 24%, and then it was 34%, and then it was like 48%. And so consumers were saying, hey, we want to buy cars online. So you look for this change. In Silicon Valley, they call it the why now. It's this like same famous VC question where they'll say, why is now the best time to build this business? And they're looking for some sort of change in the market. Yep. And the third thing you need to look for a gap that's being created by this consumer change or by this change in your market. So for us, the gap was really obvious. Consumers want to buy cars online. Literally out of those 63,000 dealerships, 0 can sell you a car online today. So clearly there's a massive market with a big change and a massive gap in it. And then you just need to go in, and this is sort of to my earlier point, just find a way to give them that thing. And so I would say step one is, go on Google Markets, find big markets. You can go on like G2 Crowd and other things, kind of find how big those markets are, what they're paying for software. For the consumer behavior stuff or just change stuff, this is actually like this amazing cheat code. You can go on these different websites of consulting firms. So McKinsey, Ernst & Young, all these different consulting firms, they have armies, like hundreds of thousands of analysts all over the world, and they're just researching trends for you. And they publish these reports generally for free because what they're hoping is Coca-Cola or McDonald's or someone will read that report and say, wow, McKinsey, this is a big problem for our business. Can we pay you $50 million to tell us what to do about it? So that's who they're marketing for. So you as like an 18-year-old kid trying to find out what to do, you can just download that report for free, get all their research that they've poured like millions of dollars into for free. That's how we found our business too.
Wow.
And then from there, sort of the last thing that you need to do is actually like really firmly establish the gap. And that's where you need to actually make some calls. You need to call some dealerships, in our case, or call your customer, email them and say, hey, listen, I'm a young entrepreneur. I'm thinking about building something in your industry. I've done some research and it seems like this thing is going on, this change, this problem, et cetera. Are you experiencing that? Are you seeing that? Like, what are you doing about that? And if everyone, like if you call 20 customers and they're like, haven't heard of it, I don't see it, I don't care. Or if they're like, yeah, that's why we have this software, like it's taking care of it, you probably don't have a business. But if they're like, yeah, we're starting to notice that, and like, we don't really have an answer yet, that's when you know you have a business. And so, I mean, you could literally do this in a week. Like it's not, this is what's like kind of drives me nuts about people when they just like, they spend like years and they never launch a business. Like, just listen to this podcast. I just gave you like a 3-step formula. You go do it next week and you can launch a business. And it's probably going to have a bunch of issues. You're probably going to have to learn, but just learn along the way. And that's how you build something real. So
I love that 3-step formula, because I'll be honest, when I first sat down to think of a business, like in my head, nothing, I'm just thinking, and only things that's coming in my mind is like, the drop shipping, the social media marketing agency. But I'm like, yes, this is a way to make few 100,000 a year or even take it to million, but what can actually take you to like those multi-millions or over $10-50 million? And I think this formula is from a person who sold a company for over 100 millions. So 100 million, so it definitely makes sense. Talking about starting a business itself, when you started that business and you're doing all this work, how do you know this is going to work?
I mean, you don't. And this is something that you just have to, like, if you are an ambitious person and you want to achieve something in life, you have to get really ridiculously comfortable with making decisions without perfect information. And this is actually what will separate you from your employees as you become a leader and a CEO of your business. Your employees want all the information before they make a decision. And as a CEO, it's not that you can make better decisions or you have more information. You are just more comfortable making decisions with limited data. And so as a young entrepreneur, when you go out, you don't know if that business is going to work. And guess what? Like, I have had so many businesses that didn't work. And I think you just have to keep pushing and just keep trying. And it's one of those things is like success bias and confirmation bias where everyone sort of likes to hate on entrepreneurs that have made it and give this advice because they're like, well, yeah, you don't hear about all the people who tried and didn't make it. It's like, well, yeah, because they didn't keep trying.
Yeah.
But you also are so quick to ignore everyone who's achieved anything. They had so many failures along the way. Like my business, the business before, $1,000 a day, $0 a day. So you don't know it's going to work. You don't know if it's going to succeed, but you do know for sure, no matter what, if you don't try, you will never achieve that goal. So it's like even if you have a 1% chance, that is infinitely higher than a 0% chance if you never try. So you just go for it. And
I think the quote, winners never quit and quitters never win, is definitely a good quote. It's from Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Which goes into this of like, if you just keep trying, you're going to find success eventually.
Yeah.
It might take a few years or might take a year for some people, but eventually you'll get there.
It might take decades. You just go for it.
Exactly. Talking about when you started the business, obviously it was a software business. So did you have any programming knowledge or like coding knowledge that allowed you to be the guy who built it?
So I actually really didn't. Like I had a 4-year degree in computer science, but I graduated when I was 21 and I was starting this business when I was 25.
Okay.
And I really hadn't done any programming since then. So it's 4 years out. And programming had changed so much from when I graduated. Like when I graduated, we were learning like C++ and like basic stuff. And now like in Silicon Valley, everyone was like on Ruby on Rails and Node.js. And I was like, I don't even know what those are. I literally cannot write a single line of this code. And I might be able to learn how to write this in like a year of hardcore studying. But what I actually did, and this is what I'd recommend to any young entrepreneur as well, is you need to go out and find someone who can be your co-founder in a complementary skill set way. I think the mistake a lot of young entrepreneurs make is they just do a business with a buddy or a friend, and it's like, you're good at marketing and your friend's really good at marketing too. And so now like
two marketers,
like who's running the tech department? Who's handling customer success? Like, so for me and my co-founder, Marty was this like programming wizard. He was the computer science Stanford master's dropout, like could program the whole thing. And I was always more the business guy. I was going to do more of the fundraising pitches. I was going to like help get the first customers. I was going to build like our marketing plan and website and things like that. And I think that's what allowed us to succeed early on. It also, frankly, like if you are the marketing guy and you go hire your buddy who's also the marketing guy, someone's still got to build the product, which means you've got to pay for it. And like we didn't have the money to go pay someone else to build our business. So early on, just by having someone whose skills are entirely complementary to yours, I really like the one business, one technical founder approach. You can build a business basically for free. I mean, we built it on the couch of my 300 square foot apartment in San Francisco. And then over time you can actually build a team out. But yeah, my technical skills had basically no help early on in the business.
I think that really makes sense as well, because people do say that don't start a software company if you don't know how to code. And if you're going in solo, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
That's kind of like almost 100% guaranteed. Finding a co-founder, we can say find a co-founder, but how do you actually go about finding the right co-founder?
So I had to go through some of the weirdest experiences in my life to actually find my co-founder. So first I went on this website, like cofounderdating.com or something. And
there's a website for co-founder dating?
Yeah. I mean, not actually dating, but you're finding a co-founder. Yeah. So I would go on and I would like cold email different people and I'd be like, hey, I have a app idea. Like, do you want to build it with me? And this is one thing that, just as a side note, if I can just go on a little bit of tangent, I think business people always screw this up, is you think, I have an idea for an app. It's going to change the world. I just need to go find someone to build it for me for free. That is the wrong approach.
Yes.
What you want to do is you want to find someone where you can say, hey, I want to build a business together with you. Let's go in on this 50-50. And that's what, ultimately what I did is you split the business 50-50, both own half of the business. You have the exact same salaries, everything. Like I'm not finding some nerd to go build my app for free.
Yeah.
I'm finding someone who's like going to be in the trenches with me and build up a business. So I went on this website and I would email different people saying, hey, do you want to be my co-founder? And just meet the weirdest people. I remember I met this one guy who just had these like inch long fingernails. And he just spent the whole meeting like tapping them on the desk. Like with his super long fingernails while we were having coffee. And I was like, they say finding a co-founder is like finding a partner for life. Like you get married to them. And it's true. And I was like, I don't want to be married to this guy. Like this is not for me. So that guy was out. And I just tapped into my network. Like there was a guy that I had worked with at this other company that was sort of looking for a new job. And I bought him dinner. I said, hey, here's my idea. Do you want to be my co-founder? I think I asked 5 or 6 people to be my co-founder. And basically everybody said no. And I think this is, again, like, if you know your outcome, you just keep trying. Yeah. But people, how many rejections do some people need to say no? You might need 1 rejection, 2 rejections. You say, it's not for me. Like, clearly I'm not meant to do this. And it's like, no, you just keep trying until you get the result. So I kept trying. And eventually I was telling my buddy, Marty, about this business idea that I had. And at the time, it actually wasn't specifically in car dealership space. I was still like had a few different ideas. And one of my ideas was actually more in the e-commerce space. And I was telling Marty about it. And he was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, have you thought about XYZ? And he like asked me a few questions. I was like, oh, those are pretty insightful questions. And then later, as I was like looking for co-founders, I was like, let me just like look up Marty's background. And I learned that the business that he had just sold to Dropbox was the business I was thinking about doing. And he didn't mention it. And so I messaged him, I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, you like, let me tell you about this idea that you already built and sold. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to see how you thought about it. And he was like, but actually, like, we should grab lunch and like talk about other ideas that you have, because I'd be interesting. And at the time, I never considered I could actually make Marty my co-founder, because he had just sold the company to Dropbox. And you always have an earn out. And it was only like a couple of months after, but to my surprise, Marty was open to starting this business with me. So I think that's one of those, I've seen this happen just repeatedly in business, where a lot of times I have an idea of how things will go, and that just doesn't happen at all. But then out of like left field, the thing that you never expect, in this case, Marty, who had just sold his company, leaves Dropbox to start this company with me and leaves his earnout on the table, which is like crazy to me at the time. And I think that's just a lesson of like, if you just do the work and try, it may not go according to plan, but you'll often get the result that you ultimately really needed. And for me, Marty was a godsend. Like, he was,
I like that so much.
He was so smart, and he helped us build it.
I think your story is just about like not giving up. Just keep going and you will get there eventually.
Yeah.
So now going to, after starting the company, you build the software. How did you get your first client?
Yeah. So I have an approach to getting clients that I think every entrepreneur should use. It's super simple. It's not salesy. And I think as an early entrepreneur, a lot of times you struggle with being too pitchy, too salesy. So I love this approach. And I literally can't imagine getting clients any other way. I'm sure there are other ways, but I will firmly sit here today and say, this is the best way you can get clients. So you email clients, potential clients, you email potential customers, and basically you send them an email, and then you give them a cold call, and then you send them an email. And every time you just reference the fact that you just contacted them on the other way. So like your first email says, blah, blah, blah. And then when you call them, you leave a voicemail and say, hey, I just sent you an email about this. And then you send them an email and say, hey, I just left you a voicemail. So you just are persistent. But what you're doing in your persistence is you're just trying to get feedback. So we would email these customers and we would say, hey, we're Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. We just left our jobs to build software for your industry, and we think we have a cool idea. Would you be open to having a chat with us and giving us some feedback on the idea? And that's not a very salesy thing. It's not like hey, I can change your business tomorrow. It's only $5.99. It's just, hey, we're young guys. We just want some feedback. Can you help us? And what you'll find is that a lot of people are actually willing to hop on the phone and give you feedback. And then what you want to identify in that call is, does the person you're talking to actually need the thing that you want to build? And some will not need it. They just won't need it. But eventually you'll find people that want what you're building. And then you just ask a very simple question. Hey, if this was available, if we built this, would you actually buy it?
Mm.
And if everybody says no, then don't build that thing. Like do this before you even build the product. But assuming some say yes, you say, great, I think we're actually going to build this. Can we keep in touch as we build this product? And we'll just keep you updated on progress. And when it's ready, we'd love to have you be one of the first customers. And you want to be really careful with language on this, because what often happens is, as an entrepreneur, you fall in this trap where it's like, when it's ready, I'd love for you to try it.
Yes.
I'd love to give you a free trial. And people will say yes to a free trial or to trying something because they want to be nice.
Yes.
So you want to be clear with them. I'd love to have you pay me for this when I build it. And you'll be the first to know. So getting that paying agreement. And it's not a contract. It's just like if I build this, you'd want to try it. Well, you'd want to buy it. Again, language.
Yes.
And then what you do is you just keep them in the loop. 3 months, 6 months later, it's ready. You say, hey, remember that conversation, that thing that we were building? It's ready. Would you like to actually use it? And that's how we did it. We contacted dealerships. We said, this is what we're building. Over time, we keep them updated. We go back to them and say, it's ready. Let's get you on it. Not everybody that said yes actually bought it, but some did. And that's how we got our first 10 customers. And actually, this is like one of those things that you just have to do when you don't have enough money to build a real business. What we really did is we got 10 customers to say yes, they would buy it. And then we went and showed investors those commitments. They're not contracts. They're not like guaranteed, yes, we will buy it. But we can prove that there's a real market here with interest. So then we went to investors and said, listen, we just need some money to build this thing. We've got customers lined up. Like, let's go. And we were able to raise just about $1 million from investors just by saying like, it's not if you build it, they will come. It's like, they're already coming. We just need the money to build it.
Okay.
So you're able to sort of hack your way into traction without really spending any money on building it. And then you just go build the thing. So
how do you go about getting an investment for your business? Like, I'm sure in the SaaS world, there's MVPs or like minimum viable products,
Yeah.
and then getting the product to the market, checking it if they like it, and then you go pitch it. But how do you actually get the investment eventually when you want?
Yeah. So there's two things that really make like investments happen. The first thing is every time you pitch an investor, all you're trying to do is sell them a vision of where your business will be in the future, and then show them proof points on why you think you'll actually be where you'll be. So the best proof point is revenue. We're doing $5 million a year. Last year we did $2.5 million. The year before we did $1 million. And next year we think we'll do $10 million. And the investor's like, that kind of makes sense. Like you've more than doubled the business every year. Of course you'll double it. But if you're not doing $5 million, what you have to do is you have to try to find what are the things in your business that are going to really like move the lever on that proof point. So for us, the thing early on in every business is you build something and no one buys it. That's probably the way, honestly, most businesses die. So what you do is you, again, go get those contracts or go get those commitments. And you just show those to investors and you say, I have, this market that will pay billions, and I have some customers in that market that are saying this is a big problem and they want to buy it from us. If you give us money, this is where we'll be in 18 months, 12 months. And of course, your projections are always wrong. Like I say this with genuine honesty. I have never attempted to pitch an investor something that is not going to be true in the future. And yet, and every investor knows this, I have never achieved on my pitch decks the things that I said I would do in the timelines that I said I would do them. You always miss your targets because you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But you know that, the investor knows that. So you're just trying to show some proof points to say, I think I will get there in 18 months or whatever. The second thing, and I think that often the harder thing, is how do you actually find investors? Finding investors is like this catch-22 because you can't cold email investors. There's this weird stigma in Silicon Valley. If you cold email an investor, they won't invest in you because it's almost like they feel like you haven't hustled hard enough to get a warm introduction. So if you don't get a warm introduction, you basically have no chance of getting any investment. And what we actually found is you could track how credible was the person making the introduction and how strong was their introduction. And that is like 90% correlated to whether or not you get a check. So I'll give you an example. If Mark Zuckerberg calls up one of his first investors in his company, Facebook, and says, listen, Michia is the next Mark. I would swear on my grave that Michia is going to be the next billionaire. You need to invest. That investor damn near doesn't even need to meet me. Like they're just going to write the check. But what often happens is you find these, you hustle to get an intro and the person is introing you and they'll say, hey, I sort of know Michia from this conference. I met him a couple years ago. He hit me up for an intro. He knows that I know you. So like, would you do me a favor and take a meeting with him? Now you have a 0% chance. Like the investor in their mind already thinks that they're like doing their friend a favor by meeting with you. And so the way you actually get investors for your business is you find people who know investors that you want to get in touch with and you set up meetings with them. So I won't cold email an investor, but I will cold email someone who knows an investor. And I'll say, hey, I'm building in your space or I'm building something and I think this investor would be interested. Could I meet with you and get some feedback? And I'll pitch them on my idea. And what you'll find is that during the meeting, you can tell how excited and enthused the person is about your business. Yeah. So if they're kind of leaning back and they're like, I don't know, like that sounds like a really tough market. Have you thought about like all the competition and stuff? All you do is you say, hey, this was so helpful. Thanks so much for the feedback. I really enjoyed meeting with you. And you do not ask for that intro because you know if they actually make the intro, now you have a 0% chance of getting that investor. But what you want is someone who is so enthused about your business, so excited that they think introducing you to an investor is doing that investor a favor. Because there's social credit in these introductions. If you make an introduction and that investor makes $100 million, they're going to go back and be like, wow, Susie, who introduced us, is a champion. She brought me this founder that made me $100 million. Now I owe her. So you want Susie thinking she's doing a favor for you by introducing you, or doing the investor a favor by introducing you. And if it doesn't feel like that, I just say, you know what, don't do the intro.
I think that's a really, really smart way to go about finding investors. Because I think what I've heard till now from few people I know is like they would cold DM or cold email a lot of investors and try and, well, especially in the UK, that's how they try. But within Silicon Valley, like how did you even build your network of people? Yeah.
So if I can just really touch on that, I think that people that say just cold email investors, frankly, just haven't raised enough money or like done it successfully enough. Like,
you're probably right.
I don't want to turn this into a hate like podcast, but like be careful whose advice you take. Like I have a rule for advice. I only take advice from people who are where I want to be. Yeah. So if I want advice on how to live a life and that person isn't like living a life I want to live, I just don't take their advice.
So just before we go to the mentor part, how do you find these people who are ahead of you in life so you can take their advice?
Yeah. So I have a very systematic approach to actually expanding my network. And you need this. If you're like me, if you're an introvert, someone who doesn't naturally like walk in a room and captivate the room, I think you need to be very systematic about how you actually not only expand your network, but also just like make friends and make connections. So I had just a very proven process. So what I would do is whenever I met someone that was interesting, helpful, you know, ahead of me in life, generally is what I was looking for. Because I didn't want to spend, I didn't want to like network with people that were, I didn't want to get introductions from people who were like a level below me on life. Like they're just playing a different level because they're going to introduce me to people that are sort of at their level. And I always wanted to be the dumbest person in the room. So if I met someone that was super smart or super successful, after the conversation, I would say, hey, this has been so awesome. I'm working on very specific thing in my business. So that might be, I'm working on being a better manager. I'm working on learning how to raise some investors. I'm working on this thing. Can you think about the people that you know and let me know if you know anyone in your network that's really good at that specific area. So oftentimes my ask was, I'm a new CEO. Do you know any great CEOs? The ones that you just think really run their business well. And would you mind introducing me? I'd love to learn from them. Because it's a friend introducing you, same warm intro effect happens. The friend is more likely to meet with you. And then what you do is when you meet with that friend, you ask the same question. Can you introduce me? And so I went from this like kid from South Carolina with no connections in Silicon Valley to, I mean, you know, I've happy hour with Bill Gates, like Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce. I'm at his Salesforce Tower, which is the tallest building in San Francisco. Like one day I'm up having sashimi with Mark Benioff and like the top of Salesforce Tower. And like the guy's playing the piano or watching the sunset. It's just like insane stuff that you would just never expect to happen just by not going to events and being like the coolest guy in the room, whatever, just asking, hey, can you introduce me to cool people? And you just do that 5 or 6 times and you're going to meet incredible people in your life that can really level you up and change your life in ways you can't imagine.
I think I was always looking for one good approach to find people bigger than me. That's the approach I'm going to use in my life as well. I think that itself, because I always just think like, why would someone who's one level ahead of me want to even spend time with me? But I think if I'm at a place where I can find them and then try and learn from them or find a person through them, that's a much better way to do it.
Yeah. One thing that you just said, I just want to touch on. I had this mindset for so long where you think, why would the successful person want to spend time with me? Because you read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it's all like add value first, and then
exactly.
And it's like, how the hell do you add value to a billionaire? And you're like some like kid in your 20s who has this crappy business that like wouldn't even be a blip on their radar.
Exactly.
Now that I'm successful, I think for the first time I actually get what I was doing, and I was adding tremendous value to their lives. I just didn't realize it. At some point, when you become successful, more money doesn't really add value to your life. What actually adds value is helping other people and giving back what you've learned. And so I didn't realize at the time, but I was adding so much value to my mentors just by being someone that they could share their knowledge with. And if you can be that person that just genuinely wants to learn from these people and you can apply it and they can see your life get better, that's sort of what like gives them fulfillment in life. Because, you know, the bank account numbers just, at some point, the money in your bank account becomes meaningless. It doesn't matter if it goes up or down 10%. It's not going to change anything in your life, but changing other people's lives, that's real value. And I think when you're a young entrepreneur, it's so hard to comprehend that you're adding value to these like billionaires' lives, but you just don't realize it. And so I think being super appreciative, showing that you're doing what they tell you to do and like putting that advice into action, you're adding so much value. You just don't realize it.
So that's something, a mindset shift for me as well, because I always thought that no one's going to care if they are much ahead of me in life. But I think I understand, like, if I'm looking at someone who's just starting off, I get the same feeling, like I would love to help you as long as you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
I think it's the same mindset, but at a different level.
It's nothing makes me happier now than helping other people, because other people help me. And it's just like my duty to give back now.
I like that so much. Just one more question about your business itself.
Yeah.
Why didn't you exit at 5 million?
So we had an opportunity to sell pretty early on, actually. And there was this like, is this the moment when I could make the 5 million? So Carvana, which is now a publicly traded company, they're worth, I don't know, a handful of $1 billion. At the time, they had just done this roadshow that I think they'd raised like $600 million or something. And while they were doing that roadshow, like going to different investors, they were in San Francisco. And so I got a message from their CFO saying, hey, we're in town. We'd love to meet. And at the time, we were a 3-person company and Carvana's like raising $600 million. And so I was like, this is insane. And so we set up the meeting at our office, and the CEO, Ernie, the CFO, and the chief product officer all show up. So it's like 3 of them, which is like the size of my company. And it's me and my co-founder, Marty. And they kind of played it cool early on. They were like, hey, let's just meet and talk about, you know, we're in the same industry. They're selling cars online. We're helping. But like 5 minutes in, Ernie, the CEO, just said, guys, I'm just going to be clear with you. We're here to buy your business. Like, what do you think? And I remember saying it and still like watching the words come out of my mouth, and like I couldn't believe what I was saying, but I was like, we're not interested. And I'll be honest, I've reflected on this conversation a lot and been like, was that a dumb idea? But they just caught us in this really weird moment where we had just received a term sheet from 8VC, which 8VC was this like new hot kid on the block venture capital firm. And we were getting all this other interest, and we were just about to raise $5 million and launch this new version of our product.
Okay.
And it was just this moment where it was like, I don't know why, but this is the wrong time to sell. Like there's so much momentum and going our way. I just think we need to hold off a little bit. And I don't think I would have gotten $5 million for that business personally. Because at the time, we'd raised some money, so I maybe owned like 35% of the business or something, and they probably would have bought us for under $10 million. So I might have gotten like 2.5. This is a really weird phenomenon that I don't know how to explain, but I've been fascinated by lately. I've been listening to this podcast called How to Take Over the World. Great podcast. I love the title.
Yeah, the name.
Yeah, and it's basically he goes through like different life stories of people who have done great things. So Alexander the Great, Caesar Augustus, and this really weird, interesting thing happened where early, like halfway to their goal, almost every time they were presented with something that's almost what they wanted, but not quite. For Alexander the Great, he does this, he like goes in this conquering campaign, and I'm already forgetting like the names and everything. But anyways, this other person who rules a bunch of land basically goes to Alex and he's like, listen, why don't we just split the world half and half? You will own like half the world and I'll own the other half. And Alexander is 24 at the time. And it's sort of that thing where it's like, it's not what Alexander set out to do, but it's still more than anyone could have ever imagined a 24-year-old would achieve. And you look at that and you're like, well, of course you should do it. But Alexander says no.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize this is sort of like this universal law of greatness. Yes. Everyone has this great temptation early on where you're not going to quite get what you want, but it's half of what you want. It's 80% of what you want. And you never truly knew if you were going to reach that thing. And so for us, saying no was that resisting the great temptation. For Mark Zuckerberg, he turned down $1 billion from Yahoo early on. So it's all these different things where it's like, it's not quite what you wanted, but you almost do it.
It's the universe testing you.
It's the universe testing you to see if you really want it, I think. But I will be honest, like we said no, and then I just watched, I would always check Carvana's stock because Carvana is sort of like IPO'd and went like this. Okay. And I was like, man, I might have gotten 2.5, but maybe I'd be worth like 25 now because the stock would have gone crazy. So I sort of looked back on it. But I just felt deep down that like, hey, this isn't it. You're meant for more. You came here for a reason. Don't settle for 50% of what you came here for. So we just stuck it out. And we never actually got the opportunity to sell. Like I didn't try to sell the business both times, Carvana and Upstart. I was just heads down. I didn't think I'd gotten to that point where I could get the money out. And they came to us. And the second time they came was for 110. And I was like, I'm good now. So that's how we did it. Yeah.
The business, what's the main difference between taking it from 0 to 10 and then 10 to 100? Or is there a specific point, like maybe 0 to 1, and then you have to approach it differently to take it to beyond?
So there's a couple things that will happen as an entrepreneur early in your game. Going from 0 to 1, you are the chief vision officer, the chief product officer, and the janitor. And the way you run the business is like, you just do everything and you work these crazy hours. And it's that when people, I think of CEOs, you think of this person that is like just this Herculean, immense human doing all these things. That kind of needs to be you in the 0 to 1 phase because you just don't have enough traction, enough money, enough team to really delegate or manage things. And so early on, you're just building everything. You're trying everything and you're failing a lot, but you're just putting in the hours. That's sort of the 0 to 1 phase. Once things start working, start clicking, you start getting a little bit of traction. Where most entrepreneurs fail is they don't know how to remove themselves from the success. And this was a very painful lesson for me early on because I would, you go into the office and Tim needs help with this and Jessica needs this and so on. And you're just putting out fires all day because the business still revolves around you as a CEO. And what actually happens is you become the bottleneck on the business. You're not there making things better. You're not there expanding the business. You're there. Basically, if you're not there, other people can't do their job. Yeah. And what you have to learn in that sort of, past the 0 to 1 phase, 1 to 100, a billion, whatever, is your job just becomes actually just hiring great people, aligning them on something great so that it's clear we're all rowing towards the same direction. Because if you just hire a bunch of great people and you don't give them really clear direction, they may sprint as fast as they can the wrong direction. And it's like everybody's going different directions and nothing's working in your business. So you have to, your job as the leader is you just align them. Here's where we want to run to. And you check in, are we still running there? And then they'll start veering off course. No, this is where we're running. And then you just get the hell out of their way because they're great people. And most leaders most young entrepreneurs, I think, fail to do that because it requires two different personalities and two different skill sets. This is why you often see the CEO that started the business is often fired by the board before they go public because it's almost like you need a different person to run the business once you get past that 0 to 1 phase. And I was always aware of this. And so my mindset was, if I don't learn to level myself up, the board will fire me and it's my fault. That was my mindset always. So I was constantly trying to level myself up, scale the business, and scale myself as fast as the business was scaling. Because if you're in Silicon Valley, your business needs to grow 200 to 300% a year to be like a
good business.
Like an exceptional business gets good fundraising. Good businesses get no fundraising and they die. So you have to be growing super fast. But imagine a business that grows, let's just say 200% a year. You have to grow at least 200% a year as a leader every year, or your business actually grows faster than you do and you fail. So I was just very aware of this early on. And that's really the big thing that I think brought us from 0 to 1 and then 1 to, eventually selling for 110 is just, I tried to grow faster than the business. And I was always very aware that if I'm not growing that fast, they'll replace me and that's okay. Like it's not my right to run this business forever. It's earned by putting in the work and leveling up.
I love the part of like you still keep evolving yourself as your business grows as well. The part of growing yourself, I want to come back to that, but just about the exercise, or like what was the exercise that when you made your employees go through to take them on the same vision or same path as you want for the business?
So this is something that I was really bad at early on in the business. Like the first year and a half of the business, we didn't really have goals. Like, I know this sounds so stupid, but like, honestly, I see it a lot of times with young entrepreneurs. You don't set the goals and then you don't achieve what you hope you wanted. And then you wonder like, what's going on? And we had no structure. So what we did is probably like year 2, year 3, when we started actually learning how to run a business, you go away once a year and you do a offsite.
Okay.
You get the employees, or as the company becomes bigger, you just get your executives and you sit down for like 8 hours and you're like, where do we want to be in 1 year? And this is actually something I also do for my personal life. Still now I run my life like a high growth startup, but I look and say, where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do we need sales to be? Where do we need marketing to be? What are our expenses? And you kind of map out a vision for where you want to be 1 year out. You want to do it 1 year out. 5 years tends to be
too long.
If you're growing a business rapidly, you actually have no idea where you'll be in a year, much less 5 years. So it's almost a waste of time to do 5 years. You say, where do we want to be 1 year from now? And then you just reverse map that out. Well, if we want to be here, where do we need to be each quarter? And then based on where you need to be each quarter, you break that down into weeks. What do we need to achieve every week to get to that quarterly goal, which will build up to the yearly goal? And so you literally win the year by winning each week. And then what you do is you build rhythms in place so that you don't need motivation or discipline. It automatically happens. So for us, we would have a weekly chart of all the metrics that we knew we needed to hit every week. And we would meet as a team and look at those metrics. What's going on track? What's going off track? And then you just look and you say, well, leads are going well, but sales are not going well. So we need to go work on our lead to sale conversion rate. John, my VP of sales, John, go work on that for a week. Tell us what you're going to do and go do it. Go figure out how to work on our lead to sales. Check in the next week. Is lead to sales better? It's getting better, but we're still not there. Okay, John, go work on it for another week. And by systematizing this process, you're in meeting on it regularly. We meet every week. You allow the management team to be reminded what they're supposed to work on. Because John might want to go work on our new design for the conference in a quarter. And we're spending, $400,000 on this sponsorship and blah, 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 blah. It's like right now I need John to work on lead to sales conversion rate. So as the CEO, I think it's just, you become more of a facilitator where you're asking, I'll just use my John example. You're asking John, where do you think sales can be in a year? And he sets those goals, and then you just hold people accountable to it.
I like that. And I think that's a great way also to take yourself out of the business, because once you have given them something, they won't keep coming you or bothering you once they have those systems in place. Mostly.
They still will. So I had a really interesting experiment that I ran in my company where I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. But I literally decided for 2 weeks, I wasn't going to do a damn thing in the business. So like people would come to me and they'd say, hey, Michia, we're launching the new webpage. Can you proof it? And I'd say, I'm really busy right now. Can you find someone else in the business to proof it? Or they'd say, hey, Michia, we've got this big contract, but they want to negotiate on the price. What do you think we should do? And I said, I'm really busy right now. Can you figure it out and just take it? I trust you to do it. And I said, I'm not going to do anything for 2 weeks. And I just sort of like, what I did really is I just observed how the business worked. And what you realize is that people actually will become dependent on you if you let them.
Okay.
And they don't mean to. It's just that it is easier not to think if someone else would do the thinking for you.
Yes.
And so they will ask you, hey boss, what should I do? And you're the boss, you want to help, you want to give the answers. So here's what you should do. You're actually just taking these talented, skilled people that you've taught how to do things, and you're teaching them just to ask you. So this 2 week experiment like changed my life, because what you realize at the end of it is these people can make decisions. You just weren't letting them. And so, getting out of their way and letting them make the decisions is not a natural or comfortable thing, but it's something you have to get good at. And trusting that some of their decisions will be wrong, but guess what? You make the decisions wrong too sometimes. So it's just better to let them learn and make decisions. Of course, if they make decisions consistently wrong, then you've made the wrong decision in hiring them and you need to remove them. Like that's just the way it works. But
that's a really smart way. I think one thing I never did till now, I guess I'm going to start implementing, is exactly what you just mentioned, was like letting them think. Because sometimes I guess it's also a thing of, as a business owner, that, oh my Lord, what if it's a wrong decision? But we all make wrong decisions every time in life. So that's a really nice way to put it, and something to learn for every single person who's trying to pull themselves out of a business. Because if you're not out of the business, then the business is technically running you. Kind of the biggest saying there is. How did you grow yourself? I did say last time it was the last question. This is definitely the last question for your business.
Nice.
But how did you grow yourself faster than the rate at which your business was growing? Or how did you try?
So I think most of it actually comes from mentorship. At a certain point, and this is really unfortunate, I think there's a lot of really good advice on the internet, in books, on sort of how to get your business off the ground. But sometimes you just need someone that's been in the trenches, that's living what you're living 2-3 years ahead of you. So this is where my networking strategy of asking people to introduce me to people that they thought were exceptional became really important. And I was I had almost no budget or unlimited budget for paying to learn. So throughout my journey, I usually had at least 2 professional CEO coaches. And the reason you want 2 is, one CEO coach is very tactical. It's like, hey, I need to fire my head of HR. But my head of HR is the one who usually helps me fire people. So like, how do I fire them? And they'll be like, here's the 7, bullet point list that you're going to go through and blah, 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 blah. And that's very tactical. The other CEO coach is usually a therapist or has some therapy background. And that's the like, I hate my life. I hate running my business. I just want to quit. And they're like, well, let's talk about it. Like, where do you think this is coming from? And so I always had both of those people. Outside of that, I built basically my own board of advisors. Because when you're the CEO, your board that is actually on your official board and has voting rights and things like that, they have one job. If you're doing a bad job as a CEO, they fire you. And every single board meeting you have, it's the only decision they're actually making. Should we fire you or keep you on for another quarter? So it's very hard to lean on your actual professional board to grow you. They're there to fire you if you're not growing. So you have to build your own professional network and professional board. So what I did is I hired is not the right word. I found a handful of CEOs that were ahead of me. Some had sold companies for 300, 400 million. Some were still running their company, but they were doing $20 million in a year in revenue. And we were doing like $1 million at the time. And I would meet with them for coffee. And I had like a very like systematic funnel for bringing in these mentors. First, ask for the introduction. Second, you meet with them for coffee for 30 minutes. Don't ask for a bunch of their time. And you see if you get along with them. If you don't connect with someone, even though they're very successful, I don't think it's good to add them into your mentorship circle. You want people that you actually connect with and just like hanging out with, get along with, and because it just makes it fun for both parties. If it's awkward, they also probably aren't getting that value out of it that I talked about. So you want that. And then after that 30-minute coffee, you say, hey man, this was really helpful. I'm trying to build like a little board of advisors for myself to level up as a CEO. Would you be willing to meet with me once a month, once a quarter for an hour? And we'll grab coffee and I'll give you some percentage of the business. What I would usually give is anywhere from 0.2% to 0.5% of the business, which can be a lot. Like it's both a lot of the business. It's more than we would give a full-time employee, but also to them, probably very little because they're worth so much already. So it's sort of this weird, tricky balance, but I'd give them some of the business and I would just meet with them every month, every quarter. And what I would do is anytime I encountered something in the business that I knew was not going well or I needed advice on it, I would just make a list of it. And I would just bundle that list. And what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't email these people every week and say, hey, can you help me with this? Because they'll get pissed off and they'll get annoyed. I would batch my requests. And then when I go sit with them, say, here's 10 things that I'm struggling with. Can you help me with these? And they would just walk me through how they would deal with it. Because I had about, at some come and go, but usually I had 3 or 4 of like my CEO board. And if I'm meeting with them once a month, every week or two, I'm grabbing coffee with one of these people. So I have a pretty good cadence of just getting feedback from different people. And one other thing that you'll find is that just like I had 2 professional CEO coaches, different mentors will want to help you with different things. So I had one who, awesome guy, he was sort of my go-to emotional support. And so whenever we hang out, we'd go work out and then go to the sauna and then talk about life and business. And he was very like helping me deal with the stress of being a CEO. I had another one who was running like a public company. And he was a very like straight to the point kind of guy. And it's like, if you try to talk too much about like your emotions or the stress, he'd sort of just like climb up and shut down. He wanted to talk about like, how do you manage employees? So you find what different mentors can help you with. And you just pay the price of admission. Like some of these mentors, I would travel like 2 hours just to see. I had one mentor that he was in town once for a conference and he's like, the only time I can meet you is at 2 a.m. on like a Tuesday. And I was like, okay, like I'm there. I will do anything. I flew to Vegas just because he was in there for a week. I was like, I'll just fly to Vegas to grab coffee with you. Like I was so adamant. I probably in the 6 years that I ran the business, between my professional CEO coaches and my mentors that I gave a chunk of the business to, I probably spent about $760,000, $780,000 on coaching and mentorship, through equity and actual cash. Yeah. But I said almost unlimited budget, because if you can level up yourself, you unlock so much more earning potential. So $1 invested in yourself is always worth $10 in the business. So it's like, why wouldn't I spend this money? It's like a money machine. I put money in and I get more money. So
money out.
Yeah.
I like that advice so much, because people talk about investing in yourself, but at this level, the way you actually have to invest in yourself through multiple things, more than just books.
Yeah.
That's a really kind of a different world to see it as well. While you were running that company, were you single or were you in a relationship?
So I started dating my wife, my girlfriend at the time, of course, about a year and a half into the business. And
how did you balance
the
hectic life?
So we actually met, we started dating basically around one of the worst moments of the business. I had just, our business, like V1 had basically failed, and I'd laid off most of the employees, and we were just in this like really crappy spot. And I met her right around this time where we were like, we have to figure out what to do or we're going to go bankrupt. And so we started dating then, and it was a very stressful time. One of the things that I think people get wrong about being an entrepreneur or being in a relationship is there's this sort of myth that you get to pick one. Like you're either in your hustle phase and you're building the business, or you're in this like, I've made it and now I like have time for relationships and I'm emotionally available and things like that. I think that's the totally wrong way to go about it. What you need to do is first, it starts with the right partner. And for me, I had this amazing girlfriend who's now my wife. And she was very willing to be with me in those high moments. Like when we raised $5 million, she's there popping the champagne with us and she's celebrating. But when things are going really poorly, when we have 3 weeks of cash left and the $1.1 million investment deal that I signed on Friday pulls out on Monday, and I'm just like sitting on my couch crying, she's there to like be my emotional support and be my rock. And so not every partner is going to be that person. And as an entrepreneur, you need that person. If you have someone that's only there when things are going well and they're not there to support you when things are going poorly, you can't date that person. Like I don't think you should date that person even if you're not an entrepreneur, but definitely as an entrepreneur, you need to cut them out. You need to go find someone who's going to be with you, highs and lows. But the thing that I think entrepreneurs screw up often is you have to realize if they are willing to be there on the highs and the lows, you have to be willing to commit to make time for them. Dating is so much about presence and time. And so in Silicon Valley, it's very common to work till midnight. You go into the office at 9 a.m. and you're working till midnight, and the only people that see you are your employees. I never wanted to be that CEO. So we had sort of a semi-unspoken, but like oftentimes spoken rule where me and my co-founder, who are both dating and are now both married, we both started dating very early in the company. You would not see us in the office after 6 p.m. And I'm talking like once or twice a year, maybe if it's like extreme crunch time. But otherwise, we'd be leaving no later than 6 p.m. And I'd look around and be like, guys, what are you doing here? Like CEO's going home. Why are you still in the office? And sometimes my employees just wanted to stay. But I was like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have dinner with my girlfriend or, fiance, wife as it progressed. I'm going to dedicate that time to her basically 5 days a week. Like almost every day I had dinner and I was present. Sometimes you're more present. Sometimes the startup's burning down and you're doing your best to be present, but she knows you're kind of thinking about other things, but you do your best for an hour and a half maybe. And then she understands and I understand that I might need to go back to work. And many times I would leave dinner, go open up my laptop and work for another 7-8 hours. Like I work till 3 a.m. But by prioritizing just that hour and a half, not only does it give her what she needs, it gives you what you need because you're getting an emotional recharge in your life and the business can be going to hell. Everything's crumbling, everything's failing, but hey, your relationship's okay. Yeah. So it can help balance out. And sometimes your relationship is struggling, but the business is doing well. So it is sort of like it helps you balance it out. But this is a big myth. I think people think you can't have a great relationship and be like this hustling entrepreneur. Yeah. I think it'd be way harder to do it without it. I think you kind of need that emotional support.
I hear that because as a entrepreneur, I think it's a very lonely place to be in. And especially when things are not going right, it's even more lonely as well because there's no one you can really talk to unless you have someone with you on that journey. Yeah. So let's talk about the day you sold the company. Yeah. You got the money. What was the first thing you decided to buy?
So when we were building the company early on, I just had these really highs and lows. And the lows, you just want to quit. You just want to throw it all in. And my wife, to her credit, really helped me push through by coming up with this idea to put things on our wall that would remind me of why I was going through this pain. So the whole time I ran the company, we had this IKEA Malm bed, like $30, and above it, we had these photos of houses we wanted to own one day, photos of vacations we wanted to go on one day. And one of them was a car that I wanted to own. It was this white Porsche 911, black leather, like decked out, brand new. And so when we sold the company, I bought the Porsche 911 and I bought it cash, actually.
How much did you pay for it?
It was $163,000. And I remember I bought it in 2020, early 2022. So we sold the business and then I had to sell stock to actually buy it. But at the time, interest rates were like 0%. So I could have actually financed it for like 0%, which is the smart thing to do on paper. But I just wanted to buy it cash as sort of a token to remind myself like, hey, remember that this was a dream one day, that you hoped one day, and all those struggles that you went through, now you can just buy this thing cash. So like my big splurge purchase was the Porsche 911, 163 grand. And I love that car. Like it's the sickest thing ever. And every time I get in it, it's a token and reminder of I can do things in life that I once thought were impossible. It used to be a picture on the wall and now it's there and it reminds me every day.
Did all that money, millions of pounds, make you happier though?
Yes. And this is something that I feel like people want to say money doesn't buy happiness, which I think is a total.
I asked that because of that Porsche you bought. So now that's why I was like, did that bring you happiness?
Yeah, no, money, like if you grew up with the childhood I had, like you're damn right money makes you happy. And to deny that is like so frustratingly false. And I think it's just leading people astray. And there was this study done a long time ago and they looked at, does money make you happier? And actually the conclusion was yes, up into a certain point. And I think the tipping,
it was like 70 or 80.
Yeah, it was like $70,000 or $80,000. They redid this study this year and they this time went up to $500,000. And what they found is every dollar among, as you kept going actually made you happier. And the reason it cut off at $500,000 is they just didn't serve anyone making more than $500,000 a year.
Okay.
So it was like everyone just kept getting happier as they had more money.
Yeah.
Having said that, I have now hung out with a lot of billionaires, decamillionaires, you name it. The thing that actually makes you happy with money is realizing you can stop caring about money. If you're still in that boat where you think more money will make you happier and you're deferring your happiness until you reach that next arbitrary milestone, the money doesn't matter how much you make, you're not actually happier. What you need to do is set a stake in the ground and say, this is how much money I need to support all of the things I want to do in life, and then never move that goalpost. And then once you achieve that number, which is what we've done, I'm just happy. I'm now retired. I don't play the money game. I don't think about money. I literally do nothing in life to make money. And as someone who grew up not having money, and so much of my mental energy was just, how do I make money? How do I make money? That's like a burden that you get to lift off. And I can ask myself better questions. How can I give back? What can I do today to help others? What can I do to make my wife happy today? What can I do to make my friends feel appreciated? These are better questions and lead to happier outcomes. Yes. So yes, money does make you happy. Sorry, I know that's not the fun broke person answer, but as someone who's been in both shoes, the money makes you happier because you can stop worrying about money.
Yes. For me personally, it was the thing that money brings you happiness, not fulfillment.
Yes.
Fulfillment only comes from giving back or doing the things that really matter, or your purpose and stuff like that. Yeah. That's how I see things as. And that's why when I see anyone say money doesn't make you happy, I'm like, give me your money. Simple as that.
Yeah.
After this part of selling the company, and now you're at a place where you don't have to work a day, but I'm sure I don't know if now you have made investments, which could be your worst investments, but have there been the worst investments you have made?
So I've had a couple of bad investments. The worst one was, it was an indirect investment that I was stuck in and I couldn't get out, which was actually when I sold my company, I had all this stock that converted into shares of the acquiring company, Upstart.
Okay. And
Upstart was this immense company that just skyrocketed in price. And so I literally had this 2-month period where I could log in. I'm not talking opportunity cost. I could log into my brokerage account and I watched $40 million drained from my bank account. And this is again, you hear people losing money and it's money that they could have made. I could actually see the money in my bank account leaving my brokerage account. And the reason was my shares were locked up. So I literally couldn't sell the stock. And it was so foolish of me, but I attached my identity and my happiness to the number. And then when it dropped 40 million, I felt this massive void in my life. And I felt, even though I still had a good bit, I felt so broke and poor. And I was back to that childhood. But in many ways, losing $40 million actually became, and I say this, like, I know this sounds so crazy, but one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it did in some ways create that gap in my life where I'm like, I need to go find fulfillment and things outside of money. And that's ultimately, sort of what led me to how I live my life today, where I'm creating content and trying to help others, is it gave me this fire again to go do something. And I think maybe if I had had an extra 40 million bucks, I would have been like, whew, this is pretty sweet. And I would have just relaxed a little bit too much. And then you get complacent and lazy. And I think you just, you lose that passion and fire for your life. So that was definitely, I look back at it now and I'm pretty happy with where our life is. But yeah, losing 40 million bucks at 32 years old was pretty painful at the time.
I mean, I can't even imagine losing that much money because I haven't even lost like 100,000 yet.
Yet,
yes. So I want to go back to the Silicon Valley, kind of like what has been one of the best stories which you remember from your Silicon Valley time over there?
Yeah. I guess one of my own, which is just this sort of like wild Silicon Valley experience. Like if you watch the Silicon Valley show on HBO, it seems so ridiculous and unrealistic. But then if you've actually lived there, you're like, oh, actually the real stories are even crazier. So this is one of those where early on in the company, we were desperately trying to raise capital. And I went to this meeting with this Chinese billionaire. And it's kind of this weird thing. You show up a little bit late because sometimes it's like a power flex who shows up late. So I showed up like 10 minutes late, trying to just like be like, I'm too busy to meet with this billionaire. And this guy shows up like 40 minutes late to an hour-long meeting. And so I'm like, what the hell? And he gets there and he barely speaks English. So I'm trying to pitch him on the business. His eyes are glossed over. He doesn't understand a single thing I'm saying. But at the time I had a black eye. And I'm trying to like explain to him the business. He doesn't really care, but he does ask about my black eye. And I try to explain to him in like a little bit of broken English and Chinese. Oh, I'm boxing. At the time I was kickboxing. And I got this like training for a fight. And he understood it enough of it to be like, oh, like you're a fighter. And like his eyes went from glossed over to like shining. And he was like, I want to invest in fighters. Fighters want to win. And he was like, we'll invest $1 million. My team will be in touch. And he ended the meeting.
What
and it was crazy. His team actually, when we got introduced, his team was like, I don't know about $1 million. Like our boss barely understands what your business does. But his name is Andrew, and he ended up investing $500,000 in our business, and that like saved our business. So literally having a black eye saved our business early on because it was just like he liked that I was a fighter. And it's one of those weird things. Like Silicon Valley can be a really weird place, and it's hard to explain how these things happen. But
oh wow, yeah. That's a really interesting thing to even think of. Just having a black eye or something bad happen to you is gonna result in something great. I guess the universal laws.
Yeah.
Yes. What now for you?
So when you sell a company for tens of millions of dollars, there's this stereotypical thing that happens where the founder gets depressed. And you read these stories and you think, what a load of crap. This guy is freaking loaded now and he's depressed. And so when I sold the business, I was like, that's not going to be me. That's a stuck up mentality. And then I sold the business and next thing you know, you're depressed. And what really happened is I think you go from dreaming all of these things to having them basically overnight. And for me, I was 31 years old. I had achieved every single thing I had ever dreamed of and more. And I was like, where do I go from here? Like, what's next? And I did two things. One, and I think you need to do this in general when you're in these sort of transition phases, is you give yourself permission, time to figure out what's next. When a big, massive, good or bad event happens, sometimes you just need space. So I said, I'm going to take as much time as it takes to figure out what's next. The other thing that I really wanted to do is I wanted to stop playing the money game. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's just a false mindset that you fall into is where more is better.
Yeah.
Eventually, if all your needs are met, more money is just more money. It's not really changing your life. but you're probably still asking the question, how do I make more money? Because that's your primary question if you're in our society today. So I said, I need a better primary question. And as I thought about it, my better primary question became, what can I do to impact others? How do I actually give back and add to this world? And when that became my primary question, it became very obvious what I needed to do, which was try to find a way to share my experience, my story with others. And which led me to actually leave my job. I was still running my company after it was acquired. I left that early. I had a 3-year earnout, and the way they had done it was year 1 and year 2 were interesting, but year 3 was like the hammer, like so much money, multiple 7 figures. Like you're not going to walk away from this. And when I first sold the company, I was like, there's no way I'll ever leave before the 3rd year. But by the time it came, I was like, this is a bribe. They're going to pay me deep 7 figures to not do what I really want to do in life. And if I don't need that money, that's the worst deal I can make. So I walked away from it all, and we made sort of 3 big decisions. First, I started doing content. So I started a YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that. And I just want to share everything that I have learned and just teach it for free. I want to help others do what I did. I think so many people helped me along the way. I want to do that. The second thing, we moved abroad. So we're here in London now.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, when we were dating early on, we'd say, one day, I hope we can live abroad. And it was always like, even first couple months of dating, we said, one day we want to do it. And you get to this point where it's like you're deferring life for some arbitrary reason. And I think most people that say, I want to do this sort of thing, never actually do it.
Yeah.
And so we said, screw it. Like, let's do it now. So we literally made the decision. And within a couple of weeks, we were in Taipei, where we got a place, and then here in London. And we said, we're going to split our time, 6 months in Europe, 6 months in Asia. These are going to be our home bases. And then the third thing is we just both actually stopped working. And so I retired at 33. My wife retired, I think just before she turned 30. And we said, we're just going to focus on enjoying life, living life, giving back. So that's what we're doing now. And
what does day in a life look like when you just, you don't have to work for money?
Yeah.
Right. What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So my biggest fear of retiring early was that I would wake up all day and play video games like I was a kid again for 6 hours, and then get bored or watch Netflix. And if you look at the stats of retirement, this is what people do. Like on average, when you retire, you will spend 4.5 hours a day watching TV and all these like horrible things that frankly are not fulfilling to your life. So my biggest lesson, and I talked to like people that had gone on this journey before, is you need to retire to something. If you're in the position where you have achieved enough success to not need to work, you got there because you're driven. You got there because you want to grow things. You want to grow as a human. And so you can't just shut that part of your brain off and say, I'm just going to veg out now. So for me, I retired to YouTube, I guess is the way to describe it, where I don't make money from YouTube. I literally just lose money because we have a full-time team. And I'm like buying all this camera gear and lights, and no one's paying me $1 for it, no ads or anything. But I'm just doing this because it gives me a sort of a game I can play that has a real scoreboard. Like you have to fulfill that driven mindset. So I can look at my views, I can look at my subscribers, I can look at the DMs I get from kids that say, this has changed my life. And that's my new scoreboard. So I'm still playing the sort of rat race in a way, but I'm doing it in a fun way. So I wake up most days. I still try to schedule my days. I've found that if I just have nothing on my calendar, I might play video games for 6 hours. Like I will do that. And it's really easy to fall in that temptation. So the week before, or the day before the week starts, I try to schedule out. I think I want to like script videos at this point. I want to, study. I'm studying Mandarin Chinese right now, so I'll do that. I want to read a book during this period, but it's a way more balanced life. I try not to be a guru trying to teach young men how to live their life and things like that. But I do think there's a higher way to live life than society teaches you. Yes. Society basically says, let's get you to work, wake up, feed the kids, send them to school, go to work, get home, you're exhausted, you grab dinner with your spouse, you kind of say, how was your day? But you're super tired. You veg out on Netflix and you go to bed. Just repeat that the rest of your life. I think actually a healthier way to live, and what I'm doing now is you wake up and you sort of divide your day into different activities that fulfill you in different ways. So I'll spend a couple hours working on like my need to achieve. So I'm like scripting videos, filming videos. I'll spend a couple hours studying Mandarin Chinese and like growing. I'll be grabbing coffee with friends and building relationships. Lately, the How to Take Over the World podcast, I'm like nerding out on history and like just trying to learn. And I think I'm living a much more balanced life where I'm feeding all these different areas of my life. And I don't think you get to do that if you still have to make money. It's just the making money phase of life is so hard. But I think the best thing you can do is try to shrink your making money phase from like, mid-teenager to 65 to what if you could do it like mid-teenager to 25 or 30. For me, it was 31 when we sold the business. If you can just compress that timeline, you get to do so much more cool stuff in life. And that's what we're doing. And honestly, it's great. Like I love it.
I mean, I love the part of like shrinking your timeline from being retired at 60 to your 30s or even 20s. 20s is hard. I'm sure everyone wants to retire in 20s, but it's really difficult. The biggest question there is on social media, you have just answered it. If you're a millionaire, why are you making videos online? I guess this is a sense of fulfillment for you. That's the reason why you're making those videos. It's not that you are there trying to make money off it. It's more on the sense of like, hey, look, this is what I love doing. This is what now I'm doing. So I think you answered, or you're a definition of, I'm rich, but I still want to make YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So
this is like, I was that guy that I would watch the video and be like, you're worth so much money. Like, why are you teaching me how to make money? And unfortunately, I do think the vast majority of people creating content are doing it to make money. Like, I think there's a weird thing whenever you achieve success in the thing you're trying to do by teaching people how to achieve success in the thing you are trying to do. So for me, an example would be if you are growing your YouTube channel exclusively by teaching people how to grow your YouTube channel, and you've never actually grown a YouTube channel before, I just look at that and I get a little skeptical.
Yes.
I think it's one thing if you're on the money making journey and you're documenting your journey. I think that's so cool. But if you're saying, I've already made it, let me teach you how to make it too, just buy my course for $1,000. And it turns out you've never actually made it and you're just only making money from your course. That rubs me really the wrong way. So, I used to be that guy that I would see these videos on how to make money. I'd be so skeptical. And I think that's probably the healthy mindset. But again, as you become successful, you realize your greatest fulfillment is actually giving back. The money doesn't matter anymore. My stock market portfolio goes up, it goes down. Like, I don't even look at it. It's just a meaningless number at this point. What matters is how I can give back. But I do try to take a really deliberate approach. I try to be very clear that I'm not selling anything. I think if I say, I can make you rich, just buy my course, it dilutes the message a little bit. So I do try to just give everything away for free. And it's not for everybody, but for me, I'm in a good enough position to be able to do that. I don't need to worry about monetizing my content. It's just for fun.
Yeah. I like the answer a lot. And I think yesterday I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Timo who was approaching this question. He was asked about, do you think people trying to make money off social media, giving information about making money is the right way? And he mentioned about how you can either build a business and then talk about it, or you're just an influencer.
Yep.
And you can either take that route or you can take the entrepreneurial route.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good explanation of like these type of two peoples on the internet as well.
Yeah.
My question about these young people who are watching videos and everything, why do you think most people don't get rich?
Most people don't get rich because they literally just get into this information overload. You think that the thing holding you back from getting rich is your lack of knowledge. And so you watch the videos, but you always feel like, I just need to learn more before I start. Getting rich is actually surprisingly easy. Like, it's not a clear-cut, smooth journey, but there's a very clear path that many people have taken to get rich, and you just need to emulate that path. What you actually have to do is just get started. Just do something. And if you really want to just oversimplify things, try to maintain a ratio of like at worst 1-to-1. For every hour you work in the business, you get an hour of study. But if you're in this area where you're studying 10 hours a week and you're spending 0 hours working on a business or building a business, like obviously it's never going to work. So I think just people overestimate the power of learning without actually taking action. You just need to combine the two. And then like, I know it just sounds so flippant. It's just easy to do. Like it's not, or I should say it's straightforward to do. It's not an easy thing, but it's not a complicated thing. Just follow the steps of other people that have gone before you and you will achieve the same results.
I like the answer. And I think young people listening to this definitely take that advice, because we, including me when I was starting, I was trying to read all the books, all the podcasts, learn the best ways or learn everything and then not really take any action. And I think it was just information was being overloaded. And there's a thing, the more you learn, the harder it gets, because then you have so many decisions, so much information and so much things out there to try and think about that you don't get to the main or the basics, which is to just get started.
Yeah. There's value in doing things when you're too naive to know you're doing them poorly.
Yes. And that's why when you first mentioned in the podcast where you were like, I got that I just used my HTML things and without any CSS, I just got it done. That's something which we can refer back to as well. My final question.
Yeah.
Have you met that? I mean, I'm sure you exceeded that 5 million goal now. So is that it now for the monetary goal? Is that all set now? And now it's just about the world of YouTube? Or is there a one business you think right now is that great opportunity to start, maybe? Or are you now just going to look into investing or maybe build something again, 0 to 100?
So it's a tough question.
Yeah.
I will say the decision to retire early has not been popular with my success-driven friends. Like literally I told all my friends and they're all sort of, many of them are still like worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're like, but why? Like you could just make more money. So for me, I really do think I'm done. Like I think there are seasons of life and I'm done with the money making season of life. And that's not to say that more money wouldn't change things in my life. But I had this really weird experience. It's the dumbest thing, but in New York, maybe 6 months ago, the lottery had gotten to $1.6 billion. And we were walking home with my wife and I was like, let's buy some tickets. Like, why not? And walking through Times Square and everything. And for some reason on the walk home, I became convinced that we were going to win this $1.6 billion. Obviously, I didn't, for the record.
Yeah.
But like, it's the dumbest thing ever to believe. But I was just like, I think we're going to win. Like, I don't know. I feel good about this. And so we started like talking, like, what do you think we'd do if we win the lottery? And I couldn't come up with good answers. I was like, well, I'm already driving my dream car. We go on vacations all the time. We have these amazing homes. Like, I guess like I'd get another car, or like instead of flying in nice, safe commercial jets, like maybe we'll fly in ridiculously overpriced private jets, but like we're still going to the same locations. We're still seeing the same sunsets. We can only sleep in one bed at a time, only wear one pair of shoes at a time. Like I just realized that the 1.6 billion would basically not change my life in any meaningful way. It would add more, but not anything additional in terms of fulfillment, happiness, things like that. And so because of that, I was just like, well, then why would I care about money at all? So I've really set aside making money, making a business. However, I do get fascinated by the creator economy and things like that. And I think if there was an opportunity for me to actually help my audience become more successful by creating something, that could tempt me. But you have to be very careful about it. I don't want to just, I think net on net, if I create something, my audience should be better off because of it and have more money in their bank account. If the only result is I extract from my audience and move it into my bank account, you can do that. You can do that very well on social media. I already have so many people messaging me being like, can I pay you for consulting? And I'm just like, no, like I don't want to do that. But if I can find a way to actually somehow make my audience better off by something I build, that could be fun for me, even if it sort of looks like a business. So that could be, I thought about like building an investment fund where I'm investing in my audience's businesses. Like that would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm buying part of their business so I could get better off, but like they're getting investment from me and they're getting mentorship and things like that. So I think about things like that, but it has to, if it does make money for me, it's an accidental byproduct. The number one thing is, am I impacting other people's lives? And I know this just sounds like very like high in the sky altruistic, but I'm doing it for selfish reasons, just to be clear. It makes me happy. And I just want to be happy. And I think that's what more
I think we can also put it in a better way. It makes you more fulfilled as well.
Yeah.
Because happiness is kind of just a chemical reaction in your brain, but fulfillment is that within feeling. It's just something which is unexplainable as well.
Yeah. I'm fulfilled every day I'm doing this and I'm not looking at the number. It's awesome.
I love the answer. I mean, thank you so much for joining me on this. I think we went over 1 hour, way over 1 hour, but it was an incredible conversation. There's so much more we can talk about as well. But obviously, I know your time is valuable as well. So thank you for joining me on this podcast. And it was a pleasure to have you. And guys, you can check out all the social media links to Michia in the description. And if you're listening to a podcast, it'll be in the podcast notes. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man.